All right, so we're going to do the last two problems here in the instructor-led problems on the bottom of page 59 of the Math 104 textbook. So it says a car can be rented from a local car rental business for $55 per week plus 18 cents per mile. How many miles can be driven if you have at most $280 to spend on 1 week rental? Now, I'm going to show you briefly how to do this a different way, but I'll show you how to do it the way I do it. Hopefully we understand that we have at most 280 means we can drive to a certain number of miles or less and be just fine. Okay, it's perfectly okay, in other words, to spend less than 280. That's the whole point of this. Now, if you know that intrinsically, then we can just set up this just like an equation. We just really need the upper bound. And so that's how I do it. I will set this up the other way for just purposes of completeness, and then I'll erase this as well. So basically, what we have is a rental, which is going to be $55 a day plus 18 cents per mile. So I'm going to say 18 cents per mile is 18 times M, where M is the number of miles. Let's make this equation slightly bigger. There we go. All right, so rental is that much. Now we have at most 280. Now, the official way to do this is to say the rental amount is going to be 280 or less. So we need to make sure that the rental amount, which is going to be this amount, is below the 280. Hopefully that makes sense. So the amount we spend is this much. We need to make sure that's below 280. Now, if I know that that's going to be the way, if I can use some common sense, I really don't need an inequality here. I can write an equation, and that's how I usually do it. What I usually do is instead of trying to figure out whether I need a less than or a greater than, I just write an equation and use common sense to figure out how my answer should go. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this. Let's do 280. Whoops. 280 subtract 55 is 225. I'm going to keep that equal sign there. So what I did is subtract 55 from both the left and the right hand side to get rid of this 55. And then I'm going to divide by 0.18, right? 18 cents per mile. And so if you divide both sides by 0.18, the left-hand side becomes 1250, the right-hand side becomes M. So that's how I would solve it. Again, a lot of people, if you were to set this up as an inequality, you'd have to set it up with that greater than or equal to sign. All right. Now, this is usually not my final answer. Usually what I have to do is interpret that back to the original application problem. So let's go ahead and read it. How many miles can be driven if you have at most 280? Well, if you have $280, this is saying you can drive 1,250 miles or less, right? And so I'm using common sense to figure out, yes, I could drive less than 1250 and still come underneath this $280 amount. So that's it. That's the idea. So again, I like to use equations when I set things up and common sense to say that 1250 is an upper bound. And I think that's a little bit easier than trying to set up the less than or equal to signs. So let's do another one. Let's do number 10 here. It says John has scores of 72, 78, 66, and 81 on his science tests. Find the score he can make on the final exam in order to pass with 360 points. And then it says the final exam counts as 2 test grades. So 72, 78, 66, and 81. So his test scores. Let's do total score here. Total score is equal to, well, add up the tests, 72, 78. Now I forgot the numbers. Let's click back here. 72, 78, 66, and 81. And then he has a final. Now I'll call his score on the final an F. Maybe the F is a bad for grade, but let's call it N maybe for number that he gets on the final. But remember it said that in the problem, the final exam counts as 2 test grades. So if the final exam counts twice, we're going to put it in twice, N plus N. And then the total score that John needs is 360 points. 360 points. That's what the problem said. Let me scroll back there. He needed 360 points. Now again, this is an at least. So if you're in some other class, they might ask you to write the inequality, but we can understand that he needs 360 points or more. So we'll interpret that in our answer, just using common sense. Now the left-hand side is as simple as we can make it. 360 is 360. But the right-hand side, well, we have some combining of like terms we can do. On these first 4 tests, 72, 78, 66, 81, when you add those up, you get 297. And then like terms, n plus n is just 2n. And now we're solving just like we would any other thing. Subtract 360 minus 297 and end up with a 63. Divide both sides by 2. You end up with 31.5. Now, again, the question asks, what's the score that John can get in order to score 360 points in the class? So we would say John must get 31.5 or more, obviously, points on the final. All right. So again, I just use common sense and say, oh yeah, John could earn more than that 31.5. So that's the idea. And that is how we can use inequalities, or at least inequality thinking, to solve some of these application problems. And that is it for lesson 1-4. Obviously, you can go on and on your own try the cooperative group problems, try the at-home practice problems as practice for the test. But there you go.